All right, welcome back. We are INFR3110 in the fall 2020 semester at Ontario Tech, and it's Game Engine Design and Implementation. And we're at Lecture 1, Part 1. We're talking about our course intro. I've just kind of talked to you a little bit about me and who I am, and I want to talk about the course outline and schedule. So we're kind of sitting here at week 1, and you can see that we meet from a lecture perspective every Friday between 2 and 5. So that's the standard schedule. We're going to go about 5 weeks in until we get to our midterm tests. All right. So from a outline perspective, today we're going to be hitting just a very high level look at programming. We're going to review that again. I recognize that at Ontario Tech, it's a special community of people that that use both programmers, let's say, as an example, and non-programmers. So you got kind of two groups of people if you want to split them up into those sections. Some people can do both if you're more artistic on the art side. And Gavin has really helped in our program over the last several years. He's really kind of raised the bar in terms of the way that we do things. And you could be a designer. You could be someone who is who's not exactly their forte is not programming. So that could be you as well. So I wanted to take a chance to talk about this because we're going to start off with this kind of a programming review. And what I'd like to talk about is when we do the assignments, I want to try and make a spot for different kinds of roles and each of the teams as you kind of submit your assignments. Next week we'll be talking about UML a little bit from a high level. What is UML, flow charting, all that kind of stuff. Following week we're going to get into architecture components. It's going to get more and more interesting as we go. And then finally we're going to get into, when we hit the midterm around week 5, like it says here, it's going to be a practical midterm where you'll have to kind of create something based on the stuff that we've gone over with you, excuse me, and the stuff that Nick covers with you in the tutorial. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. Now, it says here for week 5, it says our time is 2 to 5, but that's not how I fly with exams typically. And if I'm allowed to for the final exam, and we'll have to see how that goes because I got to adhere to the policies here at Ontario Tech, I'd like to make it so that it's a week long, and I'll tell you why. So this way, I'm going to give you almost like a week-long assignment. You take it away, you do your thing. It's supposed to be all you, and then the idea is that you're going to record a small video. And in fact, all the assignments that we're going to kind of give you this semester, there's going to be a video requirement. And guys, please don't panic. It's not. I don't expect you guys to be videographers or to do post-production or anything like that. That's not the exercise. It's really just explaining, almost like an oral exam. Explain your code, explain what you've done, talk to me about, and Nick, about your process a little bit, and I think it's going to go a long way to helping you, whether you're a programmer or a designer or a technical artist or whatever role you normally take, a producer. It doesn't matter. You should be able to speak to the code a little bit, and if you can't, and if you don't understand something, it's okay to say I don't get this part or whatever. Try and do it as early as possible before we get to the exam, so that way you're more comfortable with talking about your code by week 5. Okay, so again, the code, obviously by week 5 we're not going to cover a great deal amount of code, but the main thing that we are going to cover in week 4 is plugins, C++ plugin, and how to incorporate a plugin with Unity. And I think there's a great enhancement, there's a great opportunity for us with C++ and Unity to kind of get the best of both worlds. The ease of drag and drop in Unity, where you can kind of add game objects very simply. You can code or script with high performance C#, which is what Unity allows. At the same time, you can plug in a C++ component that gives us more freedom and control, right? As well as helps us break our code a little bit. But that's really what the idea is. So by midterm, anything we've talked about in the first 5 weeks of class is kind of like fair game to put on the midterm. One thing I'm going to try and do is I don't want to make the final exam all-inclusive, which means if I've covered something in the first half, it's going to stay in the first half. and then the final exam that we're going to have in this course is going to be largely based on the later stuff that we're going to be covering. Now, there might be some things you need to remember. I mean, don't forget how to use Unity in the final exam. That's not the exercise either, right? But it means that I may not ask you specific theoretical questions about stuff that we've covered in the first half of semester, just to make it so it's a little bit straightforward for you guys. And the idea for you is not to panic. I don't want you guys to feel stressed. I know how it is when it comes to doing exams and being in class at Ontario Tech during the regular time, and now we're remote, and it's really affected a lot of people, and I want to make sure that you guys have a good experience this semester. So let's try and make this class fun, and I want to make it so it's reasonable but also challenging, so that way you learn stuff. Okay, so that's the idea behind it. So that's the first 5 weeks, and then we're going to get into Thanksgiving. We're going to have a break. During study break is between the 12th and the 17th this year, so we're not going to go long before we get into study break. So it's going to be right around the corner, and that means there's going to be some assignments. One of them is a group assignment that I'm going to give you guys next week. For groups, what I'm looking for is pair programming, so that's like 2 people. All right, when you get together, I might be able to be talked into 3 people max, but usually it's 2 people. You get together with your group and you create a small assignment. It's going to be broken down into a couple parts. So what I'm hoping is that it's going to be chunkable, something that you guys can kind of take care of. It's not going to take up a lot of your time. I don't want it to. I don't want to make it so that I give you a 5% assignment and it's going to take 50 hours of work. That's not how I operate typically. So again, it's going to be broken down into these 2 parts. I'm also going to be talking about, starting next week, the project, the semester-long project that you're going to be doing, in addition to your group assignments, individual assignments, midterms, and all that kind of stuff. This course is going to keep you busy. Generally, Game Engines is a busy course. All right. So if you've been worrying about it because you're not a coder, this is maybe not your forte. Again, going back to that, please don't worry. You know, work with Nick, work with me. We'll get you through it. All right. But you need to understand how all this works. Okay. So that's kind of an intro into the first few weeks or 5 weeks of class. In the second part of semester, I mean, obviously there's more material and we have more weeks to cover. And as we said earlier, Nick, after this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you control so that you can kind of show off your screen if you're interested. But let me just get through this and then we'll go to you. So week 6, we're going to get into design patterns. And I think, to me, once we start thinking about design patterns and how to reuse some of the code, successful code patterns that have been established, and there's a group that we're going to be talking about called the Group of 4 that in the 90s created a book called Design Patterns. And it was reusable code. They talked about it in C++, and since then, the design patterns have kind of flowed into other or other programming languages like JavaScript, like C#, Java, and so on. A lot of people use these different design patterns so that way they don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's the idea behind it. And there's some successful patterns we're going to be talking about this semester, starting in week 6. So you can see that every week after week 6 and including week 6, you're going to be talking about different kinds of design patterns. And design patterns are going to be part of your group project, as well as your kind of semester-long project, all right, that you're going to be dealing with this semester. Okay, so we're going to get you to practice in tutorial, hopefully. Have a chance to look at some design patterns. A lot of the stuff you're going to be doing is in C++, but there's going to be also a good portion that's going to be in Unity and in C#. So if you've never used C# before, and if you're worried about that, again, Nick is going to be there to guide you, and I'll also be here to help you with C# patterns, right? And there's also some online resources I'm going to refer you to as we get to those discussions later on in semester. Okay, so that's going to be, week 6, week 7, week 8. We're getting into design patterns. We're going to briefly talk about human interface devices, different kinds of input devices that we can use that interface with our game engines, and how to work with those. As an example, Unity has released an advanced input system, a little bit different than what they had originally. The original input system that we had in Unity was pretty basic, and now they've really abstracted away, allowing for things like VR touch, VR interactions, and all that kind of stuff that's kind of built into Unity with their newer input systems. We can talk about that in and around week 9. Week 10, we're going to get into gameplay systems, and I'm going to talk about project checkpoints in just a sec as we go back. I'm going to scroll back here. And then post-processing, and finally your final presentations will be around week 12. Now that's going to take us right into December, week after week. Let me just skip back here before I give control over to Nick and talk about these project checkpoints. Notice that in the first half of semester, you have a project checkpoint around week 4. Okay. By the way, I wanted to mention that I work with James on aligning these project checkpoints, right? So that way they align with your GDW review nights or reviews. Okay. So when you see a project checkpoint on my outline, they're aligned with James on his outline. Okay. They should be almost exactly the same time frame or week, if you will. He might be at the beginning of the week, but then you're going to have a review with him, and there's a good chance we're going to be talking about your project, which should link back to the GDW project you're doing with your team with him. If you're not a GDW student, and that could be you, if you're not, by the way, please indicate this by a check mark. Let's try this out in the participants panel. If you click on participants, check mark if you're not a GDW student. Okay, so I see that there's a couple of you, and we can work something out where you create a project that's reasonable, that is GDW-like, and I recommend you form teams together. So far I see a few of you that have indicated you're not part of GDW, and that's okay. I'm just gonna clear that up. But you'd form teams, and you're gonna create a smaller project similar to what they're doing in GDW, where you're gonna make a 3D game, and chances are in Unity, something that's reasonable that you can pull off this semester. And how it's going to work is it's going to interconnect with not just my course here for game design, but some of the other courses that are in your year 3. Okay. And so there's a checkpoint, like I said, around week 4, and then you're going to see regular checkpoints later on. So checkpoint number 2 happens around week 7. Again, aligning with James's reviews, and then week 10, and finally your final presentations around week 12 is around when we have I like to call it JamesCon or GamesCon around week 12. So this is kind of a great time to do your final checkpoint. What we're going to be doing on this week, throughout the week, is I'm going to be meeting with each of the teams, and for about 15 minutes, you're going to pre-record a demo that you're going to show your actual project working live. Okay, that's the idea behind this. So I don't want you to do it. I know JamesCon is the way to go. I don't want you to think about this as in I'm going to run things from Unity. No. You're going to pre-record things. You're going to try it out on your own, not live, and then you're going to show us a little demo video of how your game functions and all the features of your game. You're going to go through it all. It could take you, let's say, around 10 minutes to go through that, and that's in addition to things like your documentation that'll be due by the end and all this other stuff. Okay, so the checkpoints are designed to keep you on track, kind of stuff, with your project, so that you don't, so it doesn't get run away from you. That's the idea. And the same thing with GDW. GDW, you have all these reviews to make sure you do the next release and the next release and the next release. That's what GDW is for. And of course, to help you along, to make sure that you have good guidance when it comes to making a game that's fun, which is what we want to do this semester and into next semester. So that's what those are. And you're also going to see these group assignments kind of interwoven along with the project checkpoints. So why is that? Because when I do a project checkpoint with you, so starting on week 4 again, going back to this, Nick, hang tight, I swear I'll give you control. If you look at week 4 as an example, right, then we're also going to be talking about this group assignment 1, part 2. Well, guess what I'm going to be doing with you there? I'm going to be probably asking you to, to show me something about your group assignment 1, part 2 during week 4, right? So while I'm checking with each of the teams, each of the groups. The other groups, my expectation is that you'll be working on your group assignment. Okay, so that's the idea with this one, so we can keep live and keep active. There might be times where I can't record everything that we're doing here. For example, when we have activities, it doesn't make any sense that we record things live on YouTube. And also, it might be a little bit intrusive. So there'll be times where I stop recording and then start a new recording. Okay, just letting you guys know. Okay, so I'm going to let, at this point, I'm going to let Nick take it away. I'm going to let you share, Nick, if you don't mind.
Absolutely not. I don't mind. I already opened up.
Okay, let's see if you can. If you share, I'm not sure if I can share at the same time. Try it. I think I'm going to have to stop.
This will stop others sharing.
Yeah, go. That'll be good. All right.
Okay, so this is my tutorial schedule. In this class, we don't actually have a tutorial like every week. As you can see, obviously we don't have one this week, given that it would have already passed by now. But we don't have one next week, but we do have one in the third week of classes. And this is simply just because like we looked at like the actual schedule like of like the classes that he's doing and like the things that that Tom is doing like for the lectures, and it just didn't make sense to have a tutorial for these first 2 weeks. And obviously in that first tutorial we'll be going over things like hopefully a few of you are at least a little bit familiar with ReSharper. It's a pretty useful tool, very, very useful. I haven't used it a whole lot, but I do know like the basics of it. And, personally, my only issue with it was the fact that it would recolor my my formatting, and that's literally the only issue that I've ever found with it. But then I'm also going to re-go over UML. Obviously, like Tom is going to have gone over UML at that point, as well as flowcharts, and I'm just going to give like examples and stuff and pseudocode, and because you have to give UML and flowcharts with your assignments, or pseudocode. I believe it's a choice. Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, you're gonna.
You guys, a cool thing you can do in Visual Studio, where you can make automatic UML diagrams. So just set, like Visual Studio will set it up for you. It just makes making UML a lot easier, and honestly, like, it's still like a skill that you need to learn. So we'll practice doing it regularly as well as doing it that way. I also am going to be going over like just a general OOP review. Obviously, I'm assuming at this point a lot of you are already pretty adept with object-oriented programming, but I'm going to be going over specifically the differences between object-oriented programming in C++ and object-oriented programming in C#. Setting up secure virtual, setting up destructors and stuff like that, and then C#. It's just showing you the differences and like what things you need to watch out for while making it, as well as mentioning a few of the specific differences that you really need to watch out for in Unity. And we'll get there when we have that tutorial. The next week will obviously be a Unity tutorial. You need to know that because your midterm's the next week. That's a practical midterm. Thus, obviously you're going to need Unity. The week before, you will have learned about plugins and DLLs in class. I believe it's the week before. It might have been the week before that.
Yeah, no, it's the week before for sure.
The idea is that that session will be an interactive session, and it will, if you don't come to it, you can't complain about not being able to complete your midterm, basically. It will be like, assuming that there aren't any rules broken with that, but me and Tom talked about specifically doing it this way, teaching you guys about DLLs and plugins, and basically just making it free, easy marks as long as you come to the tutorial. Like, yeah, that's pretty much it. It'll just be basically I'll be running a session on you writing the actual like plugin and DLL that you're gonna need for your midterms, basically. So don't skip that one. If you're gonna come to any, like, make sure to come to that one. and hopefully you're coming to all of them, but obviously. After that, we have our study break, reading week. After that, there's no tutorial. Again, not enough content after we come back from reading week to really justify a tutorial. And then the next week, week 7, so October 28th, we'll have design patterns, which are really fun, and looking forward to being able to like show off a few different design patterns from things that I've written in the past, or things that I'm planning on maybe writing up a few things in Unity specifically to show off design patterns. But those are always fun. Those are very enjoyable. They're very cool. And then there's no tutorial. Oh wait, sorry, I misread. Memory management, which is fun in Unity, I guess you can say. Memory management is interesting in Unity because you can't actually allocate and deallocate memory like you can in C++. So it's a very different ballgame than it is in Unity. However, you can still do memory management within a DLL, and that was one thing that my group did. So that's something that I want to talk about, where we specifically we had specifically allocated things that happened in the DLL that were then passed back from the DLL when we needed things to be like dynamically allocated and like manage memory. This way we could keep everything clean and neat and tidy and not have to worry about Unity deleting it by accident or the memory just getting cleaned up after or something like that. Because I believe we had an issue with that. It's unlikely that you guys will run into that, hopefully, but it's always an option, and memory management is a very cool topic. And then we have no tutorials for like the next 2 weeks after that. Just there really isn't. Again, those are things that like I don't really need to showcase in the tutorials as much. Those weeks are specifically things that like I don't really need to showcase as important as the next tutorial, which is Unity optimization, which is specifically that's a lot to help your I believe your group assignment 2 part 3 requires that you show some form of optimization through Unity, and that's the reason for that tutorial, basically, to make sure that you have the necessary items in your assignments. Make sure you have the necessary skills to complete them. And then our last tutorial will be on December 2nd, and that'll be just last minute project help. Anything you guys need, the entire tutorial will just be dedicated to like, if you guys have questions, like, I believe there's a final exam, Tom?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a final exam.
There's still a final exam.
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure. Like, I don't want to like say there is and then find out like 5 minutes later. I know I heard you say it, but I wanted to be sure. And you can ask questions about the final exam. You can ask like, it'll be basically just a study session with last minute project help. As at that point, there's like 3 more days until your final project's due. As well as that's when your GDW games are due, and you can feel free to ask me for help on your GDW games as well. That's what this class is here for. This class is the linchpin in all of your GDW games, basically. But yeah, that is the gist of my schedule. You'll notice there's a lot of like gaps without tutorials, and I'm sure you guys will enjoy that break. We're trying not to overwhelm you guys with like too much. This class is like notorious for being I don't want to say tedious, but just like a lot, overwhelming at times. This class is very notorious for that, for being, what's the word? They called CG the gatekeeper of like, year 2. This is the gatekeeper, quote unquote, of year 3. I'll tell you, it's not nearly as hard as intermediate CG is overall. I will tell you that you're gonna have a better time with this than that. And if you did great in that, you're gonna have an amazing time here. But yeah, I will pass it off to Tom. And that's like the gist of my TA schedule and everything.
All right. Let me just share my stuff now. Okay, so... All right, thanks, Nick. So that, to me...
problem.
So to me, that Nick covered most of how things are going to go, and I think his advice to you is right, which is, you know, we want to try and make it so that it's fun. There's definitely going to be a pile of things to learn in this one. I see it.
Oh, no, raised his hand.
Yeah, I see it. Give me 1 sec,
Okay.
and
Sorry.
then we'll get there. No problem. We're going to have a pile of stuff to kind of work with you on. Before I take Anthony's question, Anthony, just hold that question 1 sec. I want to talk about the breakdown of marks, which is kind of look like this. All right. So again, just to wrap up the whole discussion about the outline and all that stuff, your course project, which is equivalent to GDW, right, is worth 25% of your final grade in this course, right? Group assignment 1 and group assignment 2, they're worth combined 25% of this course. That's like 50% right there. And it's mostly group work. There is going to be individual assignments, which are combined worth 15%, as well as a midterm test, which is practical, 15%, and your final exam, which is, again, there's 2 parts. There's a theoretical piece that will have some questions around theory. Again, it won't necessarily cover the first half. Like, you don't have to necessarily remember stuff, but you will maybe have to write something about, you know, the things that we've talked about throughout the semester. Okay, so I'm not expecting you to remember facts or dates or anything like that, but you should understand general concepts to respond to. And then finally, there'll be a practical portion that you'll have to complete. This, again, what I'm looking to do is, you know, serve this to you, the final exam, during exam week, but through the entire week. So you won't have a specific time period where you're being watched, or, you know, you have a time limit to what to do. You'll have the entire week. That's what I want to do, so that way you'll be able to do your exam whenever you feel like it, whenever you can, during that time. I'd like to do it that way. Will I be allowed to do it that way from the administration is another thing. And I'm going to work with them so that it's going to happen, because I want you guys to have, like I said, a good time. All right, now, Anthony, if you want to, you can chat, or it was a question about the course project, he says, for people who are watching live on YouTube. In terms of the reports, how robust, technical are you expecting them to be? Well, I would like you not to do a report at all. How about that? I prefer if you do a demo video on everything, but there's going to be a reporting piece, and that's all to do with you know, your planning. It's almost like you're gonna create an additional game design document that is going to really be talking about what your game is about. You're also going to be reporting about you know, the kind of code that you're using. So again, like Nick said earlier, you can use UML to describe your code. There'll be sections of the report where it'll be pluggable. You can plug in the things that you need to do, and it doesn't matter to me if the report is that just covers stuff. I don't expect it to be in crazy IEEE format for the report itself. However, if you decide for whatever reason not to do the video, I highly recommend against that. You will be required to do an IEEE report. So I don't recommend that at all. I think you should try your best to do your demo videos, and your explanations and stuff should all be encompassed within the video. And so what I mean by that is your course project. When you're doing your course project, get together with your team and explain. I know IEEE is crazy, Michael. Get together with your team and talk about the stuff that I'm looking for in a short video, and the details for the videos are going to come. I'm going to give you almost like a criteria on how to create the video, what I'm looking for, and your PowerPoint could in effect be your final documentation. Okay, so that's where it's going to go. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, no latex. Hopefully not. Because I think it's a lot. And I mean, not saying that it's not good experience. When you're doing your master's, or if some of you are interested in doing grad work, yeah, you're going to be working with IEEE format, latex, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't expect you to do it here in this course unless you want to. Okay. Any other questions around the outline, the evaluations, the tutorials? Because Nick is still here. I don't want to keep you, Nick, too much longer than you have to be here. So please ask now, and then we can release Nick back into the wild, right?
Please release me.
All right.
But yes, if anyone has like any questions. feel free to ask them. That is not a question for me.
How are the late assignments handled? Okay, well, this is a good question. I think Nick, unless someone else has a question related to Nick, maybe Nick, thank you so much for attending. I'll come up with that late assignment thing in a second. Then I'll take Adam's question afterwards. Yes, I saw your hand, Adam. Don't worry.
For the most part, Mustafa, it's like for the most part, just try not to message me at like 1 a.m. in the morning. I get like messages. I've gotten messages last year from the first years, obviously, because I made their framework at like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. and I'm the kind of person that just feels obligated to respond to those kinds of things. And I would appreciate it if like you tried to keep messages between like a 9 to 5 period, you know, kind of like an actual work day, like, you know. I would appreciate that. But yes, of course you can DM me if you would like.
All right, so I want to hit Adam's question first, and then I'll go back and answer your question, Roderick. Okay, so Adam, why don't you ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Absolutely. If you want to talk just a little bit louder, that'd be great.
Okay. Just for people that are, you know, like me and aren't too experienced with programming, so during like these assignments and like other criteria that we'd have to program for, we're able to, you know, reach out to the TA and even you, like just to get like assistance and whatnot, right?
Absolutely. And remember that Nick's on Discord, but so am I. So if you actually look on Discord on the top right there, I'm there.
You're both in there?
Yeah. So you can ask, just like Nick said, unless it's like some crazy late weekend or something like that, or if it's really after hours, don't expect a response.
Yeah,
but if you see me live, and if I'm active, and if I'm not like D&D'd or something like that, then yeah, hit me up and I'll try and answer your questions.
All right, perfect.
All right, let's get back to Roderick's question, which is how are late assignments handled? Well, I'm not the type of professor that's going to say that if you hand in something late, it's 0. I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I do is this. If you hand in a late assignment, it's 20% late for each day. That's what I normally do, okay? After 3 days, I don't accept it. That's how I do it, right? So let's say for the first day, that means now you're working out of 80. And the second day, now you're working out of 60, max, right? And so on until, you know, the third day where you're working out of 40, and that's the highest you can get. After that, you're done. So that's how I'm going to handle them. So you have some days. Now, if it's really close to midnight, let's say, for example, I've given you an assignment and it's due Friday night at midnight, as an example. If you hand it in at 12:01, I'm not going to dock you 20%. That's just, you know, a little bit cruel. I'm not that kind of person. I'm not a killer DM, you know, the kind of person that's going to go, I'm going to put like skeletons and zombies against my characters now that they only have 5 health left. I'm not going to do that. All right. Instead, what I do is I kind of say, okay, let's be reasonable, kind of thing. If it's just after midnight, you're going to be okay. All right. If it's something like 2 hours later, though, just to be fair to everybody else that had to deliver by midnight, yeah, you're going to get the 20% nick. All right. So I'm just letting you know. And I'm saying 2 hours because I want to give you guys a little bit of buffer on the days that you're going to hand it in. Again, it's not to be cruel or anything else. It's just to be fair to everybody else who's worked to get everything done on time. Okay. Any other questions around evaluations, the course outline, Nick and his tutorials, or anything else that you need before we move on to the course content? All right, Nick, thank you so much then for attending. I really appreciate you coming out. And I guess they'll see you in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. I'm sure they'll see me around other places, though. But have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy yourself.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye.
All right. So now that we've talked about schedules and everything else, let's talk about what this course is. This course is really around theories around game engine development. So if you can imagine yourself building a game engine from scratch, this course is truly for you. You can do that kind of stuff. Now, in some sense, when I think about this course and where it sits in our curriculum, and I'm telling you because when I took it in year 3, I was thinking, man, this course would have been awesome if we had this in year 2 to build your own your game engine in year 2, which we did. We built our own game engines in year 2, and the people I work with, we use WinAPI as an example. It would have been great if we had a game engines course in year 2, but the problem with that is you got so much other stuff in year 2. Intermediate CG, like Nick mentioned, algorithms. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Some stuff that Professor Hogue will teach you could take you, 50 hours, like I said before, and so it's tough to fit in this monster of a course as well. It's really, really tough. So although we would have liked to have it earlier, at least now you have a chance to work with a commercial game engine like Unity in order for you to to make a game that's a little bit more robust and everything else. And by the way, and I'm sure that James said it, this is where you can make a game that you can really love to make, because you got Unity. You can do a lot more. You have a lot more horsepower behind you when you have Unity to make a game, because you can make it quicker, right? You can prototype it fast, right? So that's what this course is kind of all about. So things that we want you to know are things like you're going to apply math, physics. You're really going to try and understand the limitations and advantages, let's say, of which commercial game engine to choose. And you're also going to learn things like we talked about earlier about design patterns, which I think is a key for most junior developers. When they start off, you learn how to reuse some of the design patterns that have been successful in the industry. So the course is really a balance of theory and practice. And I like this slide. I've had to borrow this one from Professor Alvaro because I believe in it. I think this is the way you want to do things. One of the questions I always get asked, and it's something that you're going to see here in the PowerPoint, is how do I become a better coder? And the answer is you code. There is no other way to become a better coder. You can watch tutorials all you like, but until you design your own project, until you work on your own game, or you have something that you need to produce, you won't really know what it's like. You need to debug, you need to make mistakes and all that kind of stuff, and then you become better. And it's going to take time. So there's a lot of suggested resources. One of them is Game Engine Architecture, which is the textbook for this course. Now, one thing I want to talk about is that you do not, I'm not requiring you to buy the textbook or anything like that. Not that anyone buys textbooks these days anymore. They find creative ways of acquiring them, but I'm not requiring this of you. However, on Canvas, you can see that if you really need to, you can rent the textbooks. There's several books that I've put up on Canvas that you can have access to if you want to, and you can also go through the library to get a lot of them free. All right, so a couple things that you're going to be doing, like we talked about, is this idea of this game project that we're going to be doing this semester. And we've already done this raising your hand things with Zoom. So some of you talked to me about that you're not GDW students. What I'd like to do, and I think it's kind of in line, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but 4 to 6 people should be your group size. And if I'm not wrong, for GDW, yes? Or is it larger now? I'm asking the group. So if you have an answer to that, I know James, we haven't really talked about that part with James. Should it be 4 to 6 people, or is it more or less? 4 to 6. Yeah. And the reason for this is it makes sense. So from an agile project management perspective, 4 to 6 people is kind of an optimal size to do sprints with. Okay, that's the size you want to focus on. So it'll be the same when it comes to your group project. I'm talking about the semester-long project, right? So for the people who are not in GDW, hopefully there's 4 of you, right? And this way, you can kind of combine and get some stuff done. You said 7 is possible for some groups on a case-by-case basis. If he allows it, Matthew, I'll allow it. Remember, you're going to be working within your GDW groups. So if he says, for example, your group is allowed to have 7 people, all the power. I'm there for you. Okay? If he says no, if he wants to keep it to 6, it'll be 6. I'm not going to try and break you up into, like break your teams in half because I want to give you more challenge. The only times where your teams are going to be smaller are for those little group assignments, which are different than the group project. Group assignments are like you and one other person, maybe up to 3, kind of thing, get together, and you can split your team into 2 or 3 pieces, if you will, to kind of produce the same some stuff, and I'm going to try and make your assignments related, just like your group projects are related to your big project. So the idea that is everything that we do is kind of in line or geared towards helping you make your game at the end. That's what it's for. It's not for me to derail you with assignments or projects that make no sense for what we're doing. That's going to be counterproductive. Okay. So expectations for you guys is I expect you guys to review the course materials. I expect you to practice your coding. Just because you're paired with somebody who is a programmer, and let's say you're not, which is actually a good way of combining some person who's more a technical artist, let's say, or a designer, they're pairing themselves with a programmer. That is a good pairing. And the great thing about that is you can learn from each other. And also there are going to be some assets, maybe not creation opportunities for assets, but some assets that you're going to need to actually put into the game to make it look good, right? So part of your marks are going to come from visual appeal. So it's not going to be just enough to make it functional. We need to make part of your games and your assignments fun and look good, which means you can get stuff from the Unity Asset Store if you're not a technical artist, or if you have time, and only if you have time, you can do some creational stuff, or you can get some things from, let's say, I'm not sure if you guys have Gavin this semester or not, but if Gavin is with you and is helping you develop something, try and bring that in to the stuff that we're doing, because that's the idea. The idea here is that we want to try and make it so that each course connects with the other courses, so that we don't overload you with a crazy amount of work. Okay. All right, so that's kind of expectations. There are a ton of resources we talked about. The Game Engine Architecture book is really, really good. And the other one that I highly recommend, and that was in that list that I mentioned here, is Ian Millington's Game Physics, if you want to talk about his game physics engine, as well as design patterns, which I'm going to hit later on. So if we look at design patterns, if you actually look up design patterns here, so game design patterns or game programming patterns, there it is. Robert Nystrom actually talks about game programming patterns, and this is one of the books that I highly recommend. It's free online. So if you actually go to this website, gameprogrammingpatterns.com, you can read the entire book free, and I think it's a great read. Whether you're a technical artist or a programmer or a designer or a sound engineer or whatever your role is going to be in your game, you should read it, all right? And I mean, it's a good read because it's self-explanatory. It's not a terrible, difficult book to read, and I think his style when he writes the book, I think is conversational, so I don't think it's something that you can't read, all right? So totally useful, highly recommended, and it's helped me a lot in my coding projects because as a reference and also just as a lead sometimes into what I'm going to be doing next. Okay, that kind of stuff. So that's a great book. And I just wanted to share that with you. Not this yet. Okay. So, yeah. So that's additional resources. We're going to have in-class activities. And there's going to be an in-class activity a little bit today that I'm going to get you guys to do. There's going to probably be an in-class Dropbox. So if I have something that I'm going to be doing in class, one thing that I don't have in the agenda or the outline is marks for in-class activities or little challenges. So what I'm going to be doing is when I announce an in-class activity or a challenge, it's going to be for bonus points, which is great for you. All right. So it may not be a lot of bonus points, but if you attend the classes and you participate in the in-class activities, it's like I'm paying you for it, right? Which is what I want you guys to do. So it'll be a great chance for you guys to practice your skills and attend, and there'll be a reason for doing so. Okay. So that's part of it. Again, tutorials being every 2 weeks. We talked about that. So when it comes to skills development, one of the great things about Ontario Tech is that it kind of combines all the different levels of, kind of both sides of your brain, if you will. The right side of your brain and the left side of your brain, the analytical side as well as the creative side. And also you're supposed to, communicate all this stuff because we're also in this, the Faculty of Business, right? So the idea is that you're pushing everything together, and that's what this course is about. It's kind of, I want you to put these different hats on your head when you're thinking about your project for this semester. So one of the things is, if you're a producer, the games that you're making, if you're managing your team this semester, make sure that you're on time when it comes to your reviews. And part of doing that is using a good project management tool. Now, I'm not sure. I'm just going to put my hand up here virtually for people who can't see me on YouTube. Is who is using Jira? I'm just curious. Anyone has anyone adopted Jira as a project management tool? If you have, put a check mark on the participants panel. If you haven't, but you would like to, put an X. All right. So. And if you don't want any of that, don't put anything, I guess. Well, let's talk about the different tools. So if you haven't used it, how about Trello? You guys use Trello at all? Hopefully you use some kind of project management tool. If you use Trello, press a check mark in the participants panel, please. I want to see, and I specifically want to hear from the producers that are part of our teams here. All right, so a couple people use Trello. So that's great, and thank you for that feedback. Now, what I want to talk about really briefly before we jump into the other stuff, and we're going to take a break near the middle, is the two tools that I mentioned. Trello, okay, again, we talked about this kind of combination of tech, artistry, and business. Trello is a great little tool for free if you don't know about it already, and you should have already known from James and from other classes that we use this for. It's being used by small indie developers and even larger teams for agile project management. Okay, so this is one. But the larger sister tool to this, or the father tool, I don't know if you want to call it that or not, is Jira, my friends. And Jira is not free like Trello. Jira costs $10 a month, but it allows 10 people to come together and work on a team. Great thing about Jira is it's made for agile project management, and if you want to put something really great on your resume so you can work for an outfit like Ubisoft Toronto or Rockstar or any of the AAA game studios, all of them use Jira, every single one of them. So yes, it's nice to know Trello, but it's super nice to know Jira, and I highly recommend you sign up for it. It's $10 a month, and again, you can share the cost with your team if it's a big cost for you guys. I know that being a student is tough, but this is a great tool. There's a bit of a learning curve. I have to warn you, if you're going to pick up Jira and you're going to use this thing as a project management tool, it's going to take a little bit of time to figure out how to use. All right, so again, I think it's worthwhile. I think it'll allow you to set up your project properly and to track the stuff that you're doing. And now, if I'm talking about it with you right at the beginning of your group project, so that you can start using it now before you get too deep into what you're doing with your projects and assignments. Okay, so Jira, I highly recommend. And just as an aside, the people who own Jira, Atlassian, also own Trello and Bitbucket, right? So it's like kind of a one ecosystem, and they wanted to make kind of this free tool, or acquire Trello, I think is what they did, so that way they own kind of the rights to a lot of this stuff. It's really good. All right, so that is project management tools in a nutshell. There are going to be different challenges in the course. So like I said, little things that we're going to be doing, to try and learn how to get better at the tools that I'm going to be talking about. And there's going to be, like I said, a little challenge today as well. We're going to bring up a little tool. You're going to go on there, and we're going to try and make a mess and talk about game engines a little bit. Okay. The one thing I like about what and these are Alvaro's words, I have to be honest with you, is you also don't need to be the chosen one to be good at this course, and I understand that. I believe that. And what it says here is how to get better by coding. Like I talked about, that is the best way to get good at coding. In terms of challenges, and I think this is where I agree. The idea is that you want to keep something challenging. I think the time that I learned the most, usually I've learned the most from professors that really push me to produce more. So again, my favorite professors at Ontario Tech are most likely Dr. Hogue. Really love him and the way he does his stuff, and Professor Alvaro. They're both really great. I also like James a lot and Gavin. But I'll tell you, I always learn more, although I cursed them when I was doing the some of the courses. I was like, damn that Dr. Hogue, as an example. But then afterwards I was like, wow, I really learned a lot. So that's the difference, the kind of the mix between boredom and anxiety that's here, and we want to get you into this kind of flow state. You can test your programming skills. There's some links here that you can test your programming skills on. There's a great video. This guy talks about this link here about how to make a game engine from scratch. He goes into a lot of detail. There's many parts in this playlist that he has that he discusses stuff, his whole journey. That's really cool. And you can always test your skills on this link if you're interested. One thing I'm also going to refer to a lot this semester is LinkedIn Learning. You have access to that for free through the university. I highly recommend taking advantage of it. They cover everything from C#, how to program, to concurrency, things like the latest versions of Unity. I think the last one they talked about was Unity 2019, but they're probably going to come up with another video very shortly. All kinds of information and stuff, and it's free resources for you. The challenge with LinkedIn Learning videos is there's just so much volume and where to look. So chances are what I'll be doing throughout the course is here and there I'll pop in a little LinkedIn Learning link, and they'll say, hey, take a look at this video. This is the one that's related to the stuff we're talking about here, especially when we start getting into design patterns. There's a ton of really good videos where they talk about design patterns from a different angle. Okay? So that's really good stuff. One thing to notice is this course is not about Unity, all right? Even though it's we have Unity and you learn about Unity, this is not a Unity course. And what that means is you're using a commercial game engine, but I have to say this. If you made a case to use Unreal, let's say, for example, you said, my team, Tom, wants to use Unreal. We don't want to use Unity because everyone's doing Unity, and you'd be right. I want to caution you, though, if your team decides to go with Unreal or something like that, you may not get the same support from Nick and from myself that you would normally get from everyone else. I can't, kind of talk about 2 or 3 different game engines all at the same time, and neither can Nick. We got to focus on one thing. So we're going to be talking about Unity and how to do something with Unity. But if you wanted to do your project with Unreal, all the power to you. Absolutely, go ahead. There's a great learning experience on the Unreal side. But I can tell you from experience and working with the team that we're redoing. We have a game called Prime Ops that we made, my team and I, and we won the Level Up competition 2018 for Ontario Tech. Actually, AMD gave us a really cool RX 580 at the time. We redone it. We're working on, that was second year, and we're working on redoing it. My team is primarily because I've been too busy, but they're working on converting it and making it with Unreal. And I'll tell you, I can't tell you how many times we've cursed about how crazy hard Unreal is compared to Unity. But Unreal looks great. Unreal has different lighting, kind of structure and systems. And the way Unreal looks versus Unity and the way it works in general, I think it's worthwhile using. And if you talk to people from Ubisoft, they'll always say things like, you know what? Unreal is closer to Snowdrop, our engine that we use in Ubisoft, as an example, than Unity. Okay? Although they do use Unity for prototyping and other things like that. Also, just recently, I just got to talk about I have some contacts at Ubisoft. One of my friends, who is he's a cinematic artist, and he's also the director of Flow. Real Flow is what he calls it. Is what they're doing is they're doing pre-visualization with Blender. As an example, at Ubisoft, where they previs a scene, they do a 3D scene, they pre-visualize it, and then they kind of create the level from their pre-visualization. It's almost like a 3D storyboard. So really cool stuff. So Blender, that's why we use Blender throughout our program as well. But so again, not a Unity course, but we are going to be using Unity. All right. So let's talk really quickly about what a game engine is before we take a break. And then we'll take a short break and we'll come back and talk about programming a little bit. All right, so again, think about software that's extensible, that can be used as the foundation for many different games without major modification. I think that's a good way of thinking about a game engine. One thing we don't want to do is we don't want to hard code logic when it comes to a game engine, because it becomes difficult or even impossible to reuse that software to make a different game. However, I also want to talk about what what Dr. Hogue talks about a lot of times, which I highly support the way he thinks, which is make a game, not a game engine. He talks about that a lot in his courses, and I highly recommend that the way he thinks about things is the right way. Why? If you catch yourself making a game engine, then that's all you're doing the entire semester. You may catch yourself not making a game at all, which is bad. It's like always being the analyst, writing an outline for your story, but never actually writing the story itself. Okay, you don't want to be caught in this idea of analysis paralysis. I'm in writing my game engine, but you know what? My game engine, and then you never produce a game. Who cares about your game engine if there's no game, right? At the end of the day. So be cognizant of that. Don't be caught into that loop, that wild loop. It's almost like a whirlwind that catches you and sucks you down, right? Because you can get yourself into a black hole, right, by making your game engine. So be careful about that. And also, I'm of the mind that when you start writing your code, I just want to talk about code for just 1 second before we get into it in the second half of this lecture. I recommend to you that you write your code so that way it works first. Okay, don't try and make the perfect code, and that's for everybody that's here. There's two sides to this, two kind of like I would say camps when it comes to this kind of stuff. One camp says, do it right the first time, write it as best as you can, and you'll save a lot of time and pain later. And there's another camp that says, just get it working, and after you get it working, go back and enhance it and refactor it later. I'm of the second camp. I'm not of the first camp that says, do it right the first time, be really strict, test-driven development, and all that kind of stuff. It's better that it works, because if it works, it just works. Because if it works, you have something to show somebody, right? If it doesn't work, but it's really beautiful code, who cares? That's the answer, right? So make it work, then clean it up later. That's my motto, absolutely, Daniel. So let's talk about the reusability gamut. And I think I like the way this kind of flows. So again, there's different kinds of ways we can make games. We can make a game engine that only works for one game, okay, as an example. We can make a customizable game engine to build similar games. I'm not sure what games or game engines are like that. Maybe a game engine that allows modding to build any game within a specific genre. The Quake engine is a good example of that. And finally, used to build any game. I think Unity does qualify. I have to tell you, though, that I'm still quite disappointed with Unity's networking capabilities at this point. And you're going to see next semester when you do networking that the one piece that's missing from Unity to make it a fantastic game engine beyond what it is right now is the networking piece. It doesn't have a great networking piece. So just letting you know about that. Unreal is a little better, but I think networking and generally multiplayer networking is probably the weakest part of the commercial game engines that are out there right now. Yeah, I've been waiting a long time for it as well. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of disappointed that they still haven't come out with it, and it's 2020. So, all right. So, a little in-class activity before we break. And what I'm going to do with this is I want to, and I think this is a pretty good exercise. I want to create a little mind map of what you think a game engine is, and we're going to do it together. So, I'm just going to bring up concept board here for a second. And I'm going to make a board on concept board. Here's a board. And I'm going to share this link with you guys on the chat. Right? There we go. So here's the link. And I'll share this link with you guys. There it is. So your board is unnamed. We'll call it the Game Engine Mind Map. Mind map. Sure. Mind map, which is spelled with a capital I. How about that? No. All right. And yeah, we'll get a link for this. You guys should be able to see the link in a second. I think this is probably good. And I'll put this inside of our chat. So if you guys can take that and join me on concept board, that would be awesome. Okay. So you should be able to kind of combine, and I'll make it so that you can review as well or edit, and then that should be good. So try that out. So join me on concept board, guys, if you can. What I want to do with you guys is free form. I want you to think about, and And how about I do it so that I don't just send it out to Tia, but I actually send it out to everybody else. All right, try it again. There we go. Okay. I love Zoom too. How about that? Okay, so please join me on Constant 4. Yay. All right. So what I want you guys to do is you can work together or you can work alone. And I want you to think about what, if you're going to put together a game engine without looking at the PowerPoints, without looking at anything else, can you think about what a game engine means to you? What are the piece parts of the game engine, all right, that you'd put together? If you were going to put together a game engine, and guys, be nice, be respectful. Remember, you're on YouTube, right? So I want you guys to do it the best you can. And I think there might be limits on how many you can join. So hopefully there should be enough for 38 people. All right. So think about a game engine, and you can use some of the tools on the left. And the tools on the left allow you to do things like, to draw with different things. Okay, as an example, so you can insert icons. You can insert building blocks. You can insert a template. For example, if I want to insert a template, I can do that, and so can you. So take a look at the left there. There's some tools on the left that allow you to do different things. So think about, you can also use stickies. So on the top right, you can use a sticky note to kind of put together some stuff. All right? Okay. And people are having fun drawing, and I'm not seeing anything about game engines yet. Okay, so I got some stuff. I got some lighting. I'm pulling it right back. I'm seeing the big picture here, and hopefully you guys can kind of get engaged in writing this down. Animation. Daniel's having some fun writing that down. Go, go, go. You guys can combine with other groups. You don't have to necessarily work on your own. If you want to add an arrow that connects to some of that stuff and talks about game engines, see if you can think about or brainstorm the kind of stuff that you'd want in your game engine. Yeah, I know it's a mayhem of arrows. Okay. Scene management. Let's see. Scene management. This is good. ECS. So to me, we're going to talk about an ECS later on, a component system. And, I love it and I hate it all at the same time. I love it because it's efficient, and I hate it because it's hard to program in, and it becomes more complex. That's the ECS for you. You're making a simple game. I don't know if I would make an ECS. If you're making a game engine and you're going to use it over and over again, then an ECS makes sense, and we'll talk about it. There's not one solution for everything, is my thinking. Okay, so I'm just pulling back here to see if there's we got Roderick has he's way in the corner over here. Let's see what Roderick's doing. And we've got a collision system, pretty cool. He's starting to scaffold that out. Very, very cool. I'm just going to use this whole map here. We got Mustafa over here in the corner with rendering and lighting and network capabilities. That's pretty cool. All right, and we got Jonas typing a little sticky note there as well. And we got Christian, who's just writing his stuff on the back, which is cool, almost like a grease pencil-like way. I like Fmod. I think Fmod, and by the way, for people who want to use Fmod this semester, with Unity, they combine nice, eh? Fmod actually extends Unity's functionality with audio, so I highly recommend doing stuff with Fmod for sure. If you're an audio engineer and you want to add Fmod to your game project, absolutely go ahead. So we got some controllers, keyboard inputs, and different controllers as well. An input buffer. I'm taking a look at all the other stuff here. Actor, a manager. Oh, we got a line way out here. I'm going to pull back so I can see some other people's work. We got a big canvas we can draw on, guys. We got lots of stuff to do. All right, let's take a look. We got lighting again, freedom of movement, animation. Better developer, debugging tools. I agree with that. The better my tooling system is, the more I like it. In fact, that's one of the reasons when I work with JavaScript, as an example, and I make games with JavaScript, I don't use vanilla JavaScript, I use TypeScript. And for those people who've never heard of TypeScript, it's a superset of JavaScript that makes tooling better. And it gives JavaScript things like type system, which is pretty cool. All right, great. So we got tools and lighting and animation. I think that's still going over there. We got a big jumble of stuff in the middle. We're making a mess, and I love it. All right. Scene management and sound and input and a bunch of stuff. So it's not really a mind map, but it's a big jumble of piece parts, an FPS controller, it looks like. I think that's what it says. Or FPS counter, sorry, NPS counter. And we've got a multiple platform support. Yeah, this is a real challenge. That's why Unity is really great at what it does, and maybe some ways more than Unreal, because it really does make kind of producing games or building games for multiple platforms a lot easier. And it's also, from a skill level perspective, it can do it in a much shorter time than you would with Unreal. A nice interface and easy to learn, absolutely. So imagine you're learning a game engine. You're in a AAA studio, and you're just trying to figure out the game engine, and it could take you a while to figure it out. That's what some people experience when they start working in a AAA studio. They feel a little lost, as an example, and they're learning the systems and the game engine and everything else, and it takes a little bit of time to do that. So wouldn't it be nice if the game engines we make are easy for us to use? And a good example of this is if you're a lead software engineer for your team, and you want them to use your game engine. What have you done to make that that easier? Have you done it have you created documentation? Did you create a style guide? We got some stuff here that's written in really small kind of little stickies. Roderick wrote a couple of things. A collision system with multiple body types. That's really cool, as well as scene management. I think collision detection is especially custom collision detection is some of the hardest things to write from scratch, because you got to think about different collision shapes. Things like capsule to capsule collision, and there's a lot of math involved in translating your shapes, and doing things like rotating your shapes when it comes to collision. And it's a different thing also to work out collisions with dynamic objects as opposed to just with objects that are static, right? For example, two bullets that then can collide with each other. There's a lot more involved to kind of create a good collision response, as opposed to doing things with static objects. All right, so I think this is pretty good, guys. I know it's a jumbled mess, but the idea is that you guys have shown me, and this is part of the exercise, that there are a ton of different piece parts to game engines. A ton. You can see we're still brainstorming about everything that's in a game engine. Some people are continually adding stuff, and some people have stopped. Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm going to stop looking there. Thank you so much for that input. I think it's fantastic that you guys participated in this, because it's a good chance to also be more interactive. Roderick keeps adding more stuff. Let's see what Roderick is doing over here. An update patch system. Yeah, that's really useful as well, Roderick. Absolutely. Highly recommend if you can write that in. But can you imagine the pre-work that's involved? You're making a game engine, and there's a lot of work involved to try and make that work. Organizes physics, graphics, controls sound, output, for sure. Right? Here's something that I've always noticed. Whenever we start making a game, we add things like, I want to add a math system. That's the first thing that our team would do. Let's add math. Let's make our own math. We're going to make vectors, and we're going to make dot product, and we're going to do matrix calculations and matrices and everything else. And then someone puts up their hands and like, why can't we use GLM? Because GLM is already there. And another person might say, I don't like GLM. It's too heavy duty. I want to make my own vector system. Guys, a lot of times it makes sense to use the stuff that's already out there. Okay, I'm going to stop looking here for a bit. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to stop this exercise. I appreciate your thoughts and everything else. I think that there's a lot of thoughts here on the board, and I'm going to keep this. I'm going to share it later on Blackboard. I was going to say Blackboard, Canvas. All right, but I'm going to kind of go away from this for now. All right, so let's get back to this. So it wasn't quite looking like this, a mind map. It was more of a splatter board. But I kind of like it. And the reason for this is because we can think about different parts, different piece parts for an engine. There's different kinds of game engines out there. One of the questions that I always get is, what other game engines are out there? Not just Unity and Unreal, and there's a ton. So how do you choose one? I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all although Unity and Unreal would like to tell you there is, you can use Unreal for anything. You can use Unity for anything. But I think each game engine that's out there is really great for a bunch of different things and not so great for other things. For example, I think if I was going to make a mobile game, right, and the mobile market is huge right now, I think I might use Unity. I don't think I would code it in native Android or iOS. And not that we couldn't do that, coding it with Swift for iOS or maybe Kotlin or Java for Android. I don't think it's undoable. You can use libgdx as a game engine for Android, and you can use SpriteKit or SceneKit for iOS and do it native. But why? With a game engine, one of the great things is it's code once, deploy everywhere, and I think it's even more so that way for Unity, right? Unreal, it's a little bit difficult to do the same things that you can do with Unity in Unreal. All right, so that is not a one-size-fits-all. There's different aspects that you guys have covered actually in your little map that you made. Graphics, sound, interactions, context, tools you talked about. Different kind of genre that can also be used for different engines. A platformer, a racing game, a fighting game, an RTS. Maybe those genres might even have their own specific type of engine that's geared towards making racing games, as an example. Or platformers. If I'm a company that has a franchise on making platformers, I'm not going to use a racing games game engine, as an example, or even sometimes a generic game engine like Unity. I might be more specific because I start with something. I start with the base as opposed to starting from scratch. Okay, so I think it's not one size fits all. And depending on the genre, FPS or fighting or racing or RTS, you might have different systems and components that you require for each one of these things. And here, again, going back with Dr. Hoag's words in my mind, I'm always thinking about, do I want to build a system that's going to sit useless the entire semester just because I feel like showing people that I can build that kind of system? Does it really make any sense? And to me, the answer is no. I want to build a system that I'm going to use. If I want to make the second game, maybe I want to use the same game engine to make another game, and then I'm going to add components to that, and it's going to grow and evolve into a game engine that I can use for multiple games. And sometimes the game engines will die too. They won't be used again. So food for thought before we break. Think of the game genre you love playing, or think about your course project, the project that you're going to be making with your team for GDW this semester, right? And think about this. Maybe this is an exercise that you and the lead software engineer and your team is going to do, or should do, is get together and diagram out how you envision the game engine components that you need to make your game if you're making it from scratch, not Unity. If you're going to make it with C++, as an example, think about the stuff that you would need for just your game, not the game of the future or your partner's games, some other group, your group. What kind of stuff would you need for your game engine? That might go a long way in thinking about the components that you need to learn about in Unity, all right? Because those same components, and a lot of them are already written for you, are going to be available for you. Guys, I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to take a short break and get a coffee. I recommend that as well. We're sitting exactly at 3:31. We've gone for about an hour and a half. We've got an hour and a half left, and I want to talk about programming best practices when we come back. Guys, go get a coffee. I'm going to leave Zoom on. I'm just going to pause it, and then when we come back, we'll continue with the next part, which is going to be all around programming fundamentals. And again, Nick is going to go over more of this with you, in tutorial. But I want to talk about game programming fundamentals with you. All right, so let's take a short break. I'm going to stop recording things on YouTube, and we'll get back. We'll talk more about this. So let's get back. So right now it's sitting at 3:30. Let's take about 10 minutes. So let's say around 3:45. Okay, we'll say 15 minutes. 3:45. We'll get back, and for the remainder of the class, we'll just talk about game programming fundamentals. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now.